Hi, Captain Mike here with you again. Today we're going to revisit an earlier video that I did on using scrap glass, and I'm going to call this video Whoop-de-Doo 2. And if you've been following me, you may know what I mean when I say whoop-de-doo, but it's simply a glass hanging that I make using scrap COE 90 glass. I try to keep it all one COE so that you'll have less breakage, but I just layer different kinds of glass, dichroic glass, opaque and translucent and transparent over these molds that I make. And there's also, I think probably in the same video with that shows you how I do the glass whoop-de-doos, I think I show you how to do the mold. If not, I'll do one on this, but I'm pretty sure that I did. So you'll need to catch up by probably stopping right here and going back and looking at the at how I make these molds. Now, if you don't want to, that's fine. This is going to be as short as I can make it. What we're going to do today, and why we're going to call it Whoop-de-Doo 2, is we are going to incorporate the glass that I have the most of and that I get for free, and that is float glass or plate glass. There's only a limited number of things that you can do to it to color it or gussy it up, but I'm going to show you what I do. So I have all my supplies. I have float glass. I have some examples that I accomplished with that, and all of my supplies, and my coffee, which I need some of now. Oh, that's good. Now, all of you know what float glass is. It's commercial glass. It's used in storefronts, windows, and it's used in picture frames, things like that. It does not play well with COE 90 or 96 colored glass, so be aware of that. Now, here are a couple of the things that I did using the float glass and the mold. This is just a plain piece of 1/4-inch float glass. Nothing fancy, but it did come out with a nice shape, perfectly ice clear. I'm going to do something with this at the end of this video. The next thing that I did was I decided I'd add a little color. So I sprinkled float glass frit on top of the piece of glass when I laid it on the mold, and it worked out absolutely great. But you do have to use float glass frit, and you can wine bottle, beer bottles, busted up and sifted to the right size frit will work. So that's what you get when you do those. I thought it was pretty neat. The next thing I tried, because I have had limited success, was to use small dichro pieces. And by dichro, I mean dichroic glass. You should know what that is. If you don't, look it up. I won't bore you with it. It is just a very colorful type of glass. And I just dropped pieces of dichro on top of the 1/4-inch piece of float glass. Now, it did develop, out of the kiln, it did develop a few cracks that you cannot see very well right around the edges of a couple of these pieces. I don't think it's going to be a real big problem, but it is a possibility when you develop those small little cracks around certain pieces, edges and ends. It is a possibility that it could crack all the way through with you, so keep that in mind. This was just semi-successful, but it's neat and does need further study. Now, first I'm going to show you what I do with this float glass, and it's kind of a rehash of the earlier video, and then I'm going to show you a couple of different applications that you can do to these, okay? Specifically this one. So, to start with, I'll just be real quick on this because you can watch the video. I just roll out a piece of high fire clay, high to mid fire clay, 1/4 inch thick, drape it over my mold, and roll it into that whoop-de-doo shape. And once that is done, I coat the mold with whatever type of mold glass release you like. In this case, it just happens to be CYP. I find that a glass separator works great too. It's probably a little less messy. It just depends on what you want to use. I cut my glass just with a glass cutter, like normal. There's nothing fancy about it. This is just regular plate. I cut them 2 inches by 13. Depends on your mold and how big you make it. But I want to show you that you can get 2 of them on there at one time. You can use all kinds of tinted float glass. That's kind of a bluish gray. That's bluish gray too. But I have some brownish bronze, they call it. And I usually can put 2 of these in my kiln at one time. Maybe I could get a second layer, but I haven't tried that. I know I get excellent results every time if I just lay these in my small glass kiln. So I'm turning out 4 a day, and that works great. So now, let's get to what you can do. The first thing that you can do, or it's something you can do, it's a trick. I'm going to show you a tip that I'll show you. When you are using, if you're going to do the frit job, this with the frit, it's going to want to bounce everywhere as you try to drop it on there with a spoon or your fingers. So a trick that I do is you can use aloe for this. You don't have to use this Glass-tastic gel. It just happened to be in a nice little dispenser. But you can use aloe. The trick is to go right along the edge of your piece of glass, all the way around, with a bead of that gel, and the glass will stop at the edges. Some of it will bounce off, but not much, and so you'll get a nice even application. That's a great tip, so keep that in mind. You get a lot of aloe gel for a very small amount of money, and probably the way to go. You pick you up a couple of really swell little applicating bottles and you're good to go. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some color to the back of this clear piece. So hang on for just 1 second, and I'm going to go spray it. I'll be right back to show you what it looks like. Okay, we started with a piece of clear with some dichro on it, and we started with just some regular clear that had been molded on the whoop-de-doo mold. And I'll show you what you get by the addition of some spray paint colors. It's as simple as that. Just let your imagination run wild, but I'm going to show you what we have today. On this one, I sprayed the back side, not the colored side, the back side, because it's a little rougher, with some what Chameleon calls looking glass paint. In essence, it's kind of makes it look like a mirror, and it does. Look what you get. Come out pretty good. So you could highlight the back of your colored ones with this, or anything that you want to do. If you wanted to make a clear one look like a mirror, hey, that's not a problem. You could do that. It can be as simple as taking one of the clear whoop-de-doos, and in this case, we painted it with red. It's just 2 little simple coats. I put it on the rough side. You put it on whichever side you want. Again, this is spray paint made by Chameleon. It's called stained glass. I only have 2 colors. I have the green and I have the cranberry or the red, whatever you want to call it. They have 4 or 5 colors of this stuff. So get online and look and see what they have to offer. See if you can find it. It's some great stuff to use on glass. I'll show you a couple of things I've done. This one is actually some automobile paint, and it's that prismatic stuff, this color shift, a chameleon paint, and you can see kind of, hopefully you can see how it shifts. It's predominantly green and purple kind of, but it has a color shift to it. Simply sprayed the color shift color there, and then I sprayed half of it in black. You can see the difference. Color shift up here, more color shift behind the black. Instructions to tell you what to do. Kind of did the same thing with the mirror. Sprayed some red and just some regular mirror, and you know, actually this is green and red, and that's what you get, the green and the red. It looks that way on the one side, and that's on the reverse. And I did all kinds of experiments, so I may get a little confused, but I'm just trying to show you real quick what you can do with float glass by decorating it up. And here's the red and the green. So those are some things that you can do by coloring the float glass, whether you do a whoop-de-doo mold or not. But look at my video, and I'll post it down here in the bottom, a link to it. It shows how I make the mold and how I do these. Just make sure that when you do these, you use compatible glass. Float glass, compatible float glass frit, 90 COE glass, or 96 COE glass, whatever, but make sure it's compatible, and use scrap. That's what this is all about. It's about scrap. So that's my video on Whoop-de-Doo 2. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you'll go look at the other video where I showed you how to make the molds. So with that being said, I'm going to call this video finished, and I'm Captain Mike, and I'm out of here.